It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Rod Sloane. Rod is a London-based sales expert, the cold email coach. He's a host on Bright Talk Sales and Marketing channel, as well as the manager of the Sales and Marketing Alignment Group on LinkedIn, which we're going to talk a little bit about here coming up. Rod, welcome to Accelerate.
Andy, hi. I'm very pleased to be with you today. It's one of the most glorious days ever in Britain. It's a bright, sunny day. And our Olympic team has just landed back at Heathrow with a stack full of medals. So
they did quite well. Number 2, I think, overall, behind some country called the United States.
We did. So we pump a lot of money in now into sports in the UK. And, investment, they focus on what works, and they don't give money to sports that don't work. So cycling and rowing get a lot of funding. And I mean, there's a lesson there for all of us.
Yeah. I watched a little bit of the track cycling that your teams did so well on. That's so much fun to watch. I mean, granted, we only get to see it here once every 4 years when the Olympics come on, but that is a fun sport to watch. Especially the pursuit where they're starting on opposite sides of the track, and very interesting. So, maybe take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and also how you got your start in sales.
Okay, so after I graduated from university, I actually tried to be an accountant, which is probably the worst mistake I could have made.
I'm laughing because it seems like so few of my guests actually start out wanting to be in sales, but end up being there.
Oh, I was far superior. I wouldn't want to do sales. That was a low life job, and it was particularly low life because my 2 elder brothers both did it, but did it rather spectacularly well. My elder brother worked for IBM, and my other brother worked for Procter and Gamble. And they were saying, "You'll get into sales, or I'll get into sales." And after messing about for a few years, I finally got a sales job with a tobacco company here in the UK. I didn't smoke, and this sounds like I was, some sort of drug dealer, but I was selling cigarettes from the boot of the car going cold into shops around London.
So to get them to carry your product?
Carry product, yeah. You can put stickers up, and it was great. It was a great way to close. You had your feet to the counter. You had 3 closes, and you tried to close for 1,000 cigarettes once, 1,000 cigarettes twice, and then you brought out and you physically put this shrunk wrap 200 on the table and say, okay, we'll just take 200 then, right? That's 1,200. But it was great in terms of learning objections, including are you the guy that owns the shop? Rather than are you the bread man or are you the milkman who's just behind the counter at the time?
Right.
So it was really good. We had to do 15 presentations a day, which meant going into 45 different outlets a day. Right. So you learn to be tough.
Now, was this in London or somewhere else?
This was in London and in some seaside towns along the south coast.
Okay. And
that was with British American Tobacco. And then after about 3 or 4 months, BAT announced we're going to close down all our direct sales. We're going to do everything indirect, which I never heard that term before, but it meant simply I was out of work. So I then looked around and looked at other tobacco companies. And, I had no particular attraction to tobacco. It was just something I'd fallen into. And at that time, IBM were launching this strange device called the IBM PC, which I'm sure most of your listeners' parents may have heard of rather than ever seen themselves with the old Charlie Chaplin adverts.
No, that was right. I'd forgotten about those.
And my brother was involved in that, and he said, listen, Rod, IBM are doing this, but they're doing it through a lot of, using the channel as well. So there's a lot of dealers who will be looking to sell this. So why do you approach them? So I simply wrote direct mail. I wrote to, I think, about 50 IBM PC dealers in and around Greater London. And 2 of those offered me a job. And I went to work with one in the city of London. That was great. And when I first went there, they said, forget all your sales skills. What you're going to do is learn how to build an IBM PC. Because when the IBM PC, when it first came, you had to assemble it, in effect. It was almost like a piece of IKEA furniture. And you had to do these things called dip switches, and you had to.
I'd forgotten that term.
You had to load something called Lotus 123 because that's what everybody wanted, or VisiCalc or SuperCalc, and away you went. And so you learned the product, you learned how to use it, you assembled it. I delivered it for about a month, and then I moved on to the sales side, and I loved that. It was great fun. Selling the IBM PC. And then I went from that working for various software companies here in the UK until about the year when I was 38. I thought, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. So I then started my own business, and I've been sort of coaching, consulting, and doing all those sorts of things since that time.
Wow. Okay.
So that's my story.
That's your story. So let's sort of bring to the present here a little bit, is because you do a lot of coaching of sales teams on various topics. You've run this huge LinkedIn sales and marketing alignment group. Your opinion, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales professionals today?
Well, the biggest single challenge facing sales professionals is the threat of losing their job, I would have thought, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. You see these predictions of what's going to happen to the future of sales, particularly in North America, but I'm sure that will happen over here. Things become automated. But I would challenge what you said there. I tend to coach the CEOs as much as the sales team.
Right.
So I think it's the CEO, COO, maybe even the CTO, who are the key people about having their expectations set right.
And so... let's rephrase that question in terms of sales professionals, in terms of the expectations that CEOs, CTOs, COOs have for sales.
Okay, I think particularly for selling into new business, into new accounts, it's being realistic about how long it will take. I mean, I'm sure you've seen these documents, these purchase procedure documents, where it said, can an existing supplier supply this service to us? And if they can, why are we then talking to somebody else? So most companies, most corporates particularly, don't want another supplier, another vendor in there. They'd rather keep it to a minimum number. So if you're, they only want 30 and you're 31, that's quite tough for you. So that's one thing. And the second thing is just understanding the procedure.
The buying procedure.
I'll give you an example. We were selling to, I was working with a company, and they were selling to a well-known French oil company. And I thought we weren't going to get this deal. They're not talking to us. They're very Gallic in that sense. And I eventually tracked this guy down, had this big dramatic phone call with him where I went negative on him. And I said, well, I assume you're not going to buy from us. He said, oh, yes, Rob, we are going to buy from you. In fact, we're going to give you not one, but 2 purchase orders. One will come from one department and by email, and the other will come by post from another department. So I thought, I better ask the question, why are you doing that? He said, oh, it's the way we can spread the budget. Okay, and then I said, great. So the CEO couldn't believe it. I couldn't really believe that we'd won this deal because it'd gone so quiet on us. And then they went quiet on us for another month. Nothing happened. I was scratching my head. Then suddenly, out of the blue one day, this purchase order or this document arrived by post that we thought, if we could translate it, which of course all in French, was a purchase order. And my contact, the guy we'd been selling to, didn't even know it had been raised. So the question would be, if lots of people who work in companies don't know what's going on or how they buy sometimes, it's a big challenge for us as salespeople to try and understand that, particularly into new accounts.
So what are the secrets to really defining what the buying process is within a customer account?
Well, it's not rocket science. I'm sure you've heard it before. I'm sure you do it all the time, Andy. It's having more than one contact, if you can, to speak into that account, to speak to as many people as possible. But often they'll want to restrict that challenge. So it's interesting. My wife works for British Airways, and it's interesting here from her point of view, having to deal with vendors, the problems she has, and me being a vendor on the vendor side, trying to sell to a company like British Airways. So
what does she say are the problems?
Well, she says the problem will be, it's quite simple, right? She'll want to buy a project that's worth £100,000, and her manager will go up to a finance meeting, and he's got maybe 3 projects that he wants okayed or approved. That's £300,000. And that meeting, there's a guy there from technology as well, or there's a guy there from catering, or there's a guy there from engineering. And they all get what they want, but not as much. So my wife's boss will come back and say, great, we've got approval, but you thought it was for 100,000. Well, actually, I got you 50,000. Go and see what you can do. Then my wife has to go back to the vendors and say, that order you put, that thing we put through for £60,000, we want you to do it for half that price.
Which is not unusual these days. I mean, but you actually look at it, it's actually sometimes better for the vendor at that point to start with something a little bit smaller.
Well, it is. And often, if you're selling technology, which maybe has an elastic price, it's not like you're selling furniture as such or, hardware. You can maybe afford to do that if you want that big name. But it is a challenge.
Okay. So if you could see one behavior that sales professionals could master that would make a difference, as we look forward in 2017, 2018, what are you seeing? What's the sort of the one thing that sales professionals, new skill they could master, behavior they could master that really make a difference in their results? Understanding
more about their client's business rather than understanding more about your product or service. Hopefully you have a team around you that understand your product or service. Your job really is, as a project manager, to go in there and understand your client and see what this stuff will do for them. The challenge, of course, is your client may not want to share that with you. They only want to share that with you truly once they place the order. I've noticed, there's a degree of trust ramps up once you have your, a crude expression, once you have your foot in the door there. Mm-hmm. Still knocking on the door, they share any tidbits with you. They only share any tidbits. And that's the challenge. So you're almost like a Columbo type of character trying to put together what's going on here. What's really going on here and what's the nuances? And key thing is priorities. What are the timescales? Why do they need to do it this month, this quarter, this year? What's the real reason behind that? And unless you can understand and articulate what that priority is, your sale could well slip. Well, and that speaks to the importance of what you had mentioned before, and certainly we all, those of us who have worked major accounts, and the writing about major accounts is you have to have more than one point of contact at that account. You need to be able to triangulate that information against multiple sources. Well, that's fine, but even smaller accounts, lots of vendors will say, no, it's this one person. I'm the person you need to relate to. So you get pushed back in that sense. So it's an interesting challenge. Well, do you find that being the case, that even in smaller accounts, that because again, sort of the general understanding that people are sort of moving forward with in sales these days is that sort of the individual decision makers being replaced by a more of not necessarily a committee, but multiple stakeholders joining together to make a decision? Oh, yeah, yes, no, I fully accept that. But your point of contact may be restricted to one person. And people who are involved in the decision-making process, quite frankly, just simply don't want to speak to you. It's interesting when you speak to groups of professional buyers, what a low opinion they have of salespeople. Well, why do you think that is? Because salespeople become very product-orientated or generic, right, and use a lot of inappropriate adjectives, shall we say? Inappropriate. Yeah, I mean, they're focused on themselves, not the buyer. Yeah, and that's the challenge. How can you be focused on the buyer without going too native? Without going what? Too native. Your job is your job is to help the buyer obviously make a decision, but the decision hopefully is in your favor. Right, and by too native, you mean being too sympathetic to the buyer. Too much on their side, yes, too much on their side. Yes. Right. So how do you avoid that if you're a sales rep? I mean, if you're really trying to advocate for your customer and understand what they're doing, what's your recommendation on how? Okay, well, my recommendation is, and I know we slightly differ from you, is I think you need to have a larger pipeline than you currently have, so that if you say no to me, okay, disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. Rather than if you say yes to me, that's great. I'm a home run. I've nearly hit my target. So I encourage people to have bigger pipeline coverage than they think. So what do you recommend in terms of pipeline coverage? Well, I'm extreme. Sure. I work on the assumption that 80% of your prospects will end up not buying from you. 80%. That's no decision. Do it internally. Go through the competition. They simply don't get approval. In some worst cases, you mess it up yourself.
So let's dig into that 80% though, because that 80%, I mean, a little bit. It seems like to me sometimes some organizations that really becomes sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. They say, look, we average 20% close rate on our prospects, but you can change that. I mean, you can have better qualified prospects, better targeting on the people you're talking with.
Oh, yeah, that's great if you can do that. But I'm thinking often we build systems that work best for the best salespeople in that company. Whereas I'm saying, let's do something where the average salesperson can hit their targets as well. Okay, let's improve them. Let's train them if they want to. They're trainable. Let's coach them. Let's give them the skills. But let's be realistic about what's going to happen here. What's happened before? What's our competitors' close rate? All those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Rather than, I heard I was at a sales review meeting, and the technology guy said, "Oh, why do all these sales opportunities always fall through the floor? Why do they always disappear?" And I said, "Because they do. It's a fact of life." And let's not have it that if you lose an opportunity, God, that's it. Your career there is over, in essence.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's usually a group effort, win or lose.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was a frontline salesman and being in a key meeting where we were going through all our prospects for the next quarter, and the CEO of the company came and sat in the meeting. So we were presenting to not only my team, but everybody else. And the CEO turned to the rest of the team and said, "And how many of you think Rod's going to close any of this business?"
I've been in that situation.
How many? I felt blind. He didn't even look at me. I was just a sort of an artificial figure there. I can't remember what happened next. It was so horrific.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be. I've been on the end of that as well.
Yeah. Whereas
where people basically disbelieve your forecast.
Yeah, and maybe they're right to, because salespeople hopefully should be eternally optimistic within reason. But we should be optimistic. But let's say, okay, these things aren't going to happen. These things are going to slide. I mean, I remember taking over a territory, and the previous salesman said, "Oh, you're so lucky. There's a big database sales coming up here this year. I've been working on it for 18 months, and it's going to close when you're there. You're so lucky." And yeah, it did close about 3 years later.
So that's your point about the big pipeline, is that you need to be carrying sufficient number of prospects at various stages so that you have a plan B.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then how do you realistically do that? And I'm not talking about putting rubbish up there. I'm not talking about putting
qualified opportunities, qualified prospects.
Yeah, and the way to do that, I think, in the modern day and age, is to be efficient in cold emailing. That's how I came around to that way of thinking, Andy.
So the way to grow your pipeline, the way to do cold outreach, is through email.
I think so. And
better than phone.
Yes, all email does is ensure that when you have the phone call is slightly warmer.
Okay, so
rather than having, to me, I know we don't have this sport in the UK, but you have the rodeo concept in the US, don't you, where people are riding, wild horses and wild cows. And I find that fascinating.
Yes.
This Americana. Why do these people do this? But if they stay on the horse or the bull for about 9 seconds, that's a big achievement, isn't it?
Yes.
They're not staying on there for a minute and a half, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
No, the horn goes off. Once you get to like 7 or 9 seconds, the horn goes off, you jump off.
You've done really well. And when I see salespeople making cold calls, it's a bit like they're riding this bucket. It's like, God, I've been on the call for 30 seconds. Isn't this great? Yeah, I've been on for a minute. Yeah. And so wouldn't it be better where you could sit down and have a meaningful conversation, and you're relaxed and they're relaxed, and basically you're saying, okay, is there a problem here? What are you trying to do? Are we a fit for you potentially? Are you a fit for us?
So let's talk about cold emails then. So okay. Let's start serving the negative cases. So where do they most often go wrong?
They most often go wrong because people use inappropriate adjectives. We are world class. We are fantastic. We do this, we do that. We've got all these great customers. Or they use HTML. So from my point of view, there's only 4 parts of an email, and most people get these 4 parts wrong. So there's the headline. That's probably the most important thing to think of. What is your headline? What are you going to say there?
The headline being the subject line.
the headline being the subject line, right? So there's a salutation, there's their main body, and there's the signature. And in this day and age, where most people are now reading their email on what you call a cell phone, what we call a mobile phone over here.
Well, we're becoming more continental in that regard. It's more mobile here now, too.
Okay. Well, we'll probably will. But since we've had this Brexit, we'll probably go more your way then. So you've got to think that whole email has got to be read on one page of somebody's portable phone, mobile phone, cell phone. How do you do that? And how do you write to somebody so they're likely to respond?
Okay, so like I said, let's go through some of the steps of that. So let's start with the headline.
So the headline should be about them or raise curiosity. So it shouldn't be, would you like a demo of our software, a 50 demo of our software, right? Or, it should be something that's more meaningful than that. So I who's best to speak to about this, or, who's the best person? Something very simple.
So you'll have that sort of request, if you will.
I'm not going to share what I use, because although your listeners will start using it, but something simple like that. Best person. This would be a good one. Best person, ?
So just those 2 words, best person.
Best person, 2 words. Or best person at XYZ Corporation. Isn't the way of doing it. The other thing that I do, and people get surprised at this, I never, in a cold email, put the word please. Andy, could you please help me? I think it sounds so sycophantic. I'll say thank you, but I won't say please. Now, maybe in North America, please might be a more appropriate word to use. But certainly in the UK and in Europe, it's just straight in with what you want. So
best person, ?
Then the name of the guy. Hi, Andy. Hi, Andy.
All right, so let's stop there.
Okay.
Do you actually say hi?
I do, yes. I say hi. Yeah, I do.
See, to me, that is a sign of a mail merge or a mass email.
Maybe, yeah.
Hi, Andy. Hey, Andy. What about just the first name? Rod.
You could do that.
I mean, have you tested that to see whether there's...
Yes, I've tested lots of things, and I don't think that matters so much. Because this person will probably think this email is so short that it's not a mass. And these are not mass. I don't send out mass emails. I don't send out 250, 300, 4,000. I'll send out maximum 50 at one go.
All right, well, we'll get to that part. So, all right, so salutation, keep it simple. Me personally, I'd prefer people not say hi or hey because, again, to me, it's a tip-off that it's impersonal mass email, but go ahead.
Okay, well, the reason I write that is when most people respond, that's what they say. They say, hi, Rod. So I'm just mirroring what they do in that sense. So then you've got to think, okay, what do you want? What do you want from this email? And probably what you want is a referral to the person who's responsible for doing what you do. So let's say you have some health and safety software that you sell into hospitals. And you think, okay, so I want the person who's responsible for health and safety at Washington State Hospital, for example. So that's what you can ask for. You're simply going to say, hi, Andy, can you please put me in contact with the person who's responsible for health and safety at your hospital? That's all you can ask.
All right. So a question about that then is, given LinkedIn and so on and so forth, again, I would get that and sort of say, well, didn't they look at my LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, you could think that.
Or did they not search LinkedIn to find out who that health and safety person is?
Yeah, but you don't. It might be where you're introducing new innovation into health and safety, so you might not be sure. And in many ways, it doesn't matter because what you're saying is you're going to send this email to somebody quite senior in the hospital. You're not. The mistake most people do is don't send this to junior people. If you send anything to junior people, all they say is, "Hey, Sloane, where did you get my email address from? And why are you cold emailing me?" You'll get that sort of response.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that response from a senior person, from a CEO, COO, head of this department. They're too busy to respond like that. Most of them will ignore your email, fine. A few of them will tell you to go away and die, that's okay. and a few will respond positively.
No, you don't. So besides asking for the right person, though, you don't put in some succinct line about the purpose of why you need to reach that person?
No, not at all. They're not interested. They're not interested. The COO is not interested. Oh, that's Hank, or that's Frank, or that's Sally, or that's Mario. Go and speak to them.
Okay, so they refer you to Mario.
Yeah.
So what's your cold email to Mario say?
My cold email to Mario said, "Hi, I've just been on. Hank suggested I ought to drop you a line, that you're the person responsible for this. Can we set up a quick phone call?" Right? But often what will happen is, and here's a really interesting thing, they will respond to your email before you respond to them. So you'll get emails back saying, "Hi, this is Mario. What's this all about? What do you want to speak to me for?" Then you can have that conversation. Or what's even more alarming is you'll get a phone call saying, "Hi, Rod, this is Mario. You email my boss. How can I help you?" And you sometimes have to scramble and think, "Oh, okay, where's that from?" You have to sort of process that. So that's an interesting challenge.
All right. So your cold email strategy is leverage this internal top-down referral,
Correct.
implicit validation from the top, in
Correct.
order to establish a conversation with what I call the actual decision maker,
Yes.
the functional decision maker.
And if it's positive in any way, your response, then I carry on. You know, and you will get often, "Hey, that's me you're talking about. I'm that guy." Great, off you go. So the purpose really is to have a phone call, and what I would call, I think, what Mark LeBlanc refers to as a meaningful conversation, rather than a cold call. Right. So let's schedule it. Let's do that, etc., etc.
So you're doing this in a fairly targeted way. So you're not doing, as you said, 50 at a time. You're actually personalizing each one?
I would use mail merge to do this, or some merge, or whatever system you use. But I do this I would do this in Outlook or Gmail. It would be text-based email, not HTML. You don't want that.
Because it's not deliverable, oftentimes.
Not deliverable. It looks that looks marketing. The whole point of this looks like a written email that's come through from one person to another. It's simply asking one question that most people will ignore. You know, if you ask somebody a simple question, can you tell me where the fire station is? Most people will say, "It's down there, that left, that street." Sorry, I don't know. It's an easy thing for them to answer. If you say to somebody, "What's the best fire station in New York?" I go, I've got no idea. I wouldn't heard of it.
The one that puts the fire out, yes.
Yeah. So that's the point. And then that means also that your signature, most people's signatures are a dead giveaway because they have all this gump about how marvelous they are and these awards they've won and these videos they've done and what Microsoft has said about them, what Gartner has said about them, all this stuff. Just get rid of all of that.
So what do you put in there? I
just simply put my name, my phone number, and I'll often simply put a link to my LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Now, I know some other people use the system, and what they'll do, they'll put a link to maybe one video, one YouTube video that's about them. They might do that, and that sometimes works. I've seen that work quite well.
But not a corporate identifier.
No, and not a
link to their corporate website.
No. People don't care about that. Who cares about that? I don't know your company. I don't want to read about you. So it's the exact opposite of those emails you get where people say, "Hey, can we have a partnership together?" These are all the things that we do. We build websites, we build space rockets, we manufacture, electronic cars, we can do plastic bottles, we can build you mobile phones, all this sort of stuff. No, forget all of that. Just one thing. What's the one thing you want? Who's the one person you want to be put in contact with? And that's a good question for salespeople and marketing people to sit down together and work out who are the most appropriate people. Where does your product most easily fit? And you've got to write that in email in a way that people will understand. So if you've got a very technical solution that works in this micro part of health and safety, you've got to take it up to a higher level so people can understand that.
Higher level in the description, in the wording.
Higher in the description, yeah. So not how do you manage your tungsten approving lighting in the blah blah blah. No. Simply, who looks after your health and safety, or who's responsible for bringing innovation into your health and safety at your hospital? Simple as that.
Interesting. Okay.
So I do that, and are you interested in the response rates I get for that?
Sure, yes.
All right. Now, I get somewhere in the region of a 12% response rate for that. Okay. And in that 12% are people say, no, thank you, or people who say, we've got something already in place in that. And the other one is saying, you need to speak to Hank or Sally or whoever in that sense, or Francois. So you get a mixture across that. And the whole idea being, and maybe this is me being a sort of, a stingy European, I look at that list and think, okay, so 88% didn't respond. In a week's time, 2 weeks' time, will they remember who I am? Probably not. I can't remember a cold email that I received 2 weeks ago that I didn't respond
especially if they never saw it in the first place, right?
So, send it again. Send it again.
Yeah, and do you change the subject line? Because that's one of the things.
No, I don't change the subject line. I don't. I'm quite brutal. I stick with what works. I might test the subject line. Testing the subject line is okay, but I wouldn't necessarily change it.
But I've heard and read somebody that does similar strategy to what you do, except actually they'll do it, let's say, when they send out an email campaign, and they'll go and say, okay, who didn't open it? And then they change the subject line and send it again, a day later. But in your case, if you want to do it a week or two later, or doing it for cold outreach, you'll use the same subject line.
Yes, I will, because my subject line is quite lean, and you've got to be aware of all those spam filters that when you're sending into corporates, that it's amazing what words now get picked up and trashed in that sense. That's why adjectives are your worst friend in that sense. So keep it simple. Imagine if you met the CEO of Boeing, and you probably wouldn't be the person who would buy your stuff if you were selling to Boeing. But what question would you ask him as to who you could speak to? So it's a variation on that old hackneyed elevator pitch, but down to just asking people one question.
Well, slim down quite a bit.
Yeah. And I find the more senior the people are, the more likely they are to respond to that question. The more junior they are, the more they're likely to say, query you on your process.
Yeah, well, I think there's actually been some research done that verifies that. Recently, I was speaking with another guest about email open rates and so on, and that for a well-crafted email, you're more likely to get a response from a senior person than mid-level person.
Yes, you are. And that's it, Andy. And then after that, you've got to get people on the phone and engage with them. The phone to me is the most important sales tool going. And so, you need to get them on the phone and engage with them.
And cold emails, way to do that.
Yeah. And the interesting challenge is sometimes they will call you on the basis of that email, and you've got to be ready for that. I confess I've messed up a couple of times where somebody called me as a result of my email, and I thought they were marketing to me. I got a bit crotchety with them. They said, well, you emailed me first. I said, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. It was silly. And don't make that mistake.
Don't make that mistake.
Don't do what Rod does.
All right. And so we're moved to the last segment of the show, Rod, where I've got some standard questions I pose to all my guests. And the first one is a hypothetical scenario where you, Rod, have just been hired as the vice president of sales at a company whose sales have hit a rough spot. They sort of stalled out and they need to get turned around, and the CEO is anxious to have you help do that. So your first week on the job, what two things could you do that could have the biggest impact? Okay,
I think you've got to look at the sales forecast and close everything that's realistic to close. That's the important one. Maybe that's not that feasible in this day and age where things take a bit longer, but that's what I would do. I'd focus on the forecast, spend as much time on that. And then the second question I'd ask, and this might relate to another question you're going to ask me, is ask the old Ted Levitt question, what business are we really in? And focus on that.
Okay. So make sure that there's no extraneous activities that are going on that are focused on the...
Don't lose anything, and let's focus on what we're really good at.
Okay, good answer. So some rapid-fire questions. You can give me one-word answers or elaborate if you wish. The first one is, when you, Rod, are out selling, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Hopefully that I listen.
Who's your sales role model?
My sales role model would be probably my two brothers, Paul Sloane and Nick Sloane, because they were both doing very different jobs, had very different personalities. One was very bright academically, one was very gregarious, and they showed me what could be done. So Paul and Nick Sloane.
Excellent. One book every salesperson should read.
Okay. Well, there's only 13,000 books on Amazon on sales techniques, so it's a trick question. And I'm going to say none of those.
Okay. It doesn't have to be a sales book.
None of those. So I have a problem with most modern business books in the sense they seem to be one idea that's stretched out to fulfill a book. One magazine article. So I'm going to recommend a magazine article that appeared in Harvard Business Review in 1960 called Marketing Myopia, written by Theodore Levitt, who was a professor at Harvard at the time. Mm-hmm. And that article is famous because he asked the question, what business are you really in? That's a great question to ask your own. What business is the company you're in, and what business is that you're prospecting?
Okay,
it's a great question.
All right, good answer. All right, so last one. What music's on your playlist these days?
Well, I listened to a few of your previous interviews, and this question has given me the most problems in that sense because, downloads are great, but who listens to albums anymore? That's the challenge. So I'm going to say an album that came out in February of 1974, which is probably way before most of your listeners were born. But to give you an example of the albums that were coming out just in that month, Steely Dan brought out Pretzel Logic.
Pretzel Logic, right?
Kiss brought out their debut album in that month. And Tangerine Dream, the famous German electronic band, brought out Phaedra. But it was none of those. It was a live album that came out that month. And this live album, I've listened to it virtually at least 2 or 3 times a month since 1974. And it's the Van Morrison, It's Too Late to Stop Now. Brilliant album.
Brilliant album.
So much so that they brought out 1, 2, 3 follow-up albums since then of the rest of the shows that they called the music from that's just come out this month. So I would encourage everybody to listen to Van Morrison, It's Too Late to Stop Now. And it's a combination of jazz, rock and roll, R&B, Celtic soul. It's a real mixture of everything. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, no, big Van Morrison fan. I have a couple of his albums, including the Greatest Hits one, which gets a lot of play in my rotation as well. So, well, good. Well, Rod, thanks for joining me. Tell folks how they can find out more about you.
Well, the best place simply is to go to my LinkedIn profile and just type in Rod Sloane and come and join me there. I run a couple of groups on LinkedIn, a sales and marketing alignment group. Please join me there. It's a big, active group, lots going on. And if I can help in any way and a cold email, simply drop me a line. My email address is rod@rodsloane, SLOANE.co.uk, and I'll be glad to give you some very quick feedback. Delighted to.
And make sure that subject line is no more than two words.
2 words.
All right, good. Well, Rod, thanks again. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. An easy way to do that is to make this podcast accelerate a part of your daily routine, whether you listen in your commute, in the gym, or as part of your morning sales meeting. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Rod Sloane, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your sales. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.